You're listening to the Karmic Mirror podcast, where we explore the wisdom tucked within the layers of the self-help world.
Together, we bridge the gap between esoteric teachings and practical tools for everyday life, with self-love and personal growth at the heart of each conversation.
Whether you're a seasoned seeker or just beginning your path, join us and uncover the magic within and around you.
While in conversation here at Karmic Mirror, there are certain topics that always seem to weave themselves through numerous episodes. One of those topics that Michelle and I happen to mention a lot is around the nervous system, regulated, dysregulated nervous systems. We found that topic so impactful that we actually dedicated a whole series to it. And today is not about that series. Today is about the privilege we have of speaking with Vicky, founder of Wildly Creative Wellness, who is also supporting the collective with their nervous system and really just being a domino effect for letting people have their best lives and being their best selves. Vicky helps busy, thoughtful humans calm their nervous systems through therapeutic art journaling. She doesn't just teach from theory, she guides from lived experience to help you realize what you've been holding and reconnect with yourself. She creates environments where you don't need to be fixed, you don't need to be more disciplined, you don't need to try harder, you just need space to breathe. Hi, Vicky. We're so happy to have you here today with us.
Hi, I'm so happy to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
I love the whole statement. You don't need to be fixed. You don't need more discipline. You don't need to try harder. I vibe with that so hard. So,
Amen. Yeah.
welcome. And Vicky, before we get into everything, could you tell us your sun, moon, and rising in astrology? We already talked about this a little bit, but for anyone listening,
Yes. Okay. You might need to remind me.
I'm like, should I tell you?
Okay, hold on. Now I have it. Okay. So it's Cancer rising, Sun in Aquarius, and Moon in Aquarius.
Yeah, thank you. And
Yeah.
we won't ask about human design, but I'm sure after this conversation, we'll probably talk
Yeah,
about
I
it.
do. I have looked up my human design and all that stuff too. But again, like I wait, no, I can tell you. I'm a generator. I can tell you that too.
Yeah, I love it. And thank you for sharing because we were talking a little bit, you had mentioned before, like you don't know astrology, a ton, and that's totally cool. For us, it's like this extra little layer of knowing a person, and it opens up the, more fun dialogue of how we see you through the lens of astrology, especially with all of the Aquarian energy and with everything that we're going to talk about today. So it's really fun to connect the dots.
I loved the connection when we were talking before about the Aquarian energy. And that's the one thing that I have been able to consistently kind of pick out of this Aquarian energy as I learn more about astrology is that Aquarians just, you know stuff, you don't know why you know it, but you're kind of leading the path forward. And I think about you, Vicky, with even just what you were sharing about how your work came to be and just creating this quote unquote new space, new energy for women, the collective. And that feels very Aquarius to me as well, of just that knowing.
I want to jump in because I think this will start our conversation. I was looking at your intake form, and so it's fresh on my memory. That's why I wanted to say before I lose it, because I think this is so super real and relatable about what you said. You said, I did all the things right. Maybe I'm paraphrasing, but I went to college, I got married, I had kids, right? You went through, this is, the kind of paint the picture of this like perfect experience of life, of the right way to do things, right way, right? And you said, and I still wasn't feeling, I don't know if you said I wasn't feeling as happy, or there was a lot of guilt because I wanted something more. And I feel like but I feel like women probably relate to this and probably don't ever say it out loud or tell or share it with anyone else for fear of like, if I say this out, I'm guessing, right? Like if I say this out loud, now I'm really guilty. And maybe there's shame because I shouldn't be, because I'm supposed to be happy and grateful for everything I have. So can we start there? Is that helpful?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. I'd be happy to talk about that. Yeah, it's yeah, from the outside where I was about 5 years ago now, from the outside, you would assume that like you would say that my life you couldn't ask for anything more, you know. I have the safety. I more than just safety. I live in a nice home, you know. I'm not like a multimillionaire or whatever, but you know, I'm middle class. I pretty much grew up middle class. I didn't have any major tragedies in my life. And I would just go through this with myself. And I would talk to you know, eventually I found like the right therapist for me, a better connection for me. But I was talking about this and thinking about it. And again, like, you know, really initially, like you said, really talking about it more privately in like a therapy sort of environment. Because, yeah, talking about it out loud when I hadn't figured out what the problem was, you know, it was hard because, yeah, I did feel like what right did I have to still not be happy, even though I had all of the material things that anyone could possibly ever want? And the key there really is it was the material things. I didn't have the fulfillment. I didn't have the hobby or the thing that I did just for fun. You know, obviously we need money. That's incredibly important. What is it, like the Maslow's hierarchy of needs or whatever, right? Like I technically had all those things, but I guess that level, which you don't need to necessarily have all the things to be able to get to the mental side of things. There can be people who, you know, there's plenty of people who just have amazing attitudes, right? And just feel they're great. There's those stories of like someone who works as a janitor or whatever, and maybe their living situations are mediocre, they're fine, they're safe, but they're incredibly happy people, you know? And so, you know, the whole thing of like money doesn't make you happier, right? So anyway, you know, kind of just that realization and that those thoughts kept going through my mind, and I was just like, there's gotta be something. Like what's the thing that's going to get me to actually feel good and feel happy? And like you said, it was just so hard to actually talk about with anyone, like other than my best friend, you know?
You also shared that you have this generator energy. You did know that from human design. And that I find I'm a generator as well. And I find with that energy, because you are literally meant to be expending that energy in areas that light you up and get you in this flow. And so I think as generators, it makes sense. Yes, you've got a roof over your head, you've got clothes, you've got health, you've got these things, and yet your spirit is still calling for that thing that lights you up. And that's very generator human design language as well. So for me, I'm like, yeah, no duh, that you're looking for that thing that brings you that juicy joy and that light, and feeling incredibly guilty about wanting more, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
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 You made me think of flow states and how, using the other example of, I'm going to say his name wrong, but Mikhail Chermovsky. Please don't get mad at me, positive psychology people, because I might be saying it right, um, but he's the grandfather of positive psychology. And he shares the story, like, I think it's in his TED talk, but about, a person who had no partner in life, kind of just worked the same job, but had the ability to get into flow states through their hobbies and their whatever, and because of that, lived this long, satisfying life. And I was thinking about what you do, which we haven't really got into yet, which I'm really looking forward to, but there's such a clear direct line to the ability to get into a state of flow and feel really satisfied, because as you were talking, it sounds like, like having something just for you. And it's not always the things that we think. And the same thing with being in flow and really using all of your creativity and all of yourself and being fully absorbed in an experience with no real expectation for what the outcome is, right? Because which I want to talk more about too, is like not being perfect or not being disciplined enough, just doing it for the sake of joy and because you can and because it's for you, and how that has literally nothing to do with how things look on the outside. Like it has literally nothing to do with the perfect outer experience or, family unit or all of those beautiful things. because it is just so intrinsic. It's like just only you can do. And this is maybe super random, but I've been watching Love is Blind France, and there's a woman on here who's a mother and she's 39 and she's getting back into dating, right? And she says this thing, and I voice noted Allie because I really loved it. And she said, in order for me to be a great mother, I need to be my own woman and I need to feel this about my life. Right now in my life, I want romance, I want the love story, I want passion, I want all of it. And she's like, and I don't want to feel guilty about it because I've spent so many years living for everyone else. And now I need to feel like myself fully in my own womanhood. And that means every aspect of me gets seen. And I just thought that was so, I think it like relates in such a different way, right? Like so many shades of the experience and different methods to getting there. But I really love, yeah. So
So you're at your therapist
yep.
and you are sharing this inner calling, this inner knowing, just knowing something's off, sharing maybe with your best friend. Continue that journey for us.
Yeah, so, I'm the type of person, I don't know, this might be an Aquarius thing, tell me if I'm wrong, but I'm like always researching, but in a different, like not in like the classic term of researching, like I'm not sitting there reading everything, but if something isn't right, I'm just gonna keep looking for the thing. I'm gonna go one place, I'm gonna go another place. So I was listening to all these different podcasts. Early on, I listened to lots of different mom podcasts because I am a mom, and then kind of transitioning into whatever else, like going down these rabbit holes and just looking for things that I was interested in, and eventually found Ali Edwards was on the Edit Your Life podcast with Christine Koh, really great podcast, by the way. And Ali Edwards she does like a memory. She's focused on kind of more memory keeping, scrapbooking sort of work. And she makes very beautiful pages, but she also art journals. And I found this out through, I don't remember if she mentioned it on the podcast, but I went, to her, something about her like really called to me. And I went and followed her on Instagram. And I saw her on her stories just sharing these videos of her art journaling and just making. And while her things really turned out incredibly beautiful, they also looked incredibly doable. And I saw that, okay, yeah, like she's trained in art and all that, but this is not something that anyone can't do. Like everyone can do some form of this. So I, immediately when she sells art journals on her website, so I immediately went and bought an art journal. It was like the first time that I felt like so called to do something like this. And so bought the art journal, waited, bought some paints off Amazon, just really cheap. And you know, I was like, I so wanted to do it, but of course I had to wait for these things to arrive. And so I was like, but then and then the thing that I told myself too was I needed to tell this to myself, which was that if I cannot judge myself on what I'm doing, this is not about that. I just want to mess around and just have fun and just experience playing with paints. So knowing that this wasn't about the end result. And I think again, for people who don't know, I'm literally painting in a journal. It's literally a book and, it's just got thicker paper. That's really the only difference. Thin paper will sort of fall apart. But I'm literally painting in a book, letting it dry, closing it up, and then painting in it again when I feel like it. And I think what's most liberating about that is that's in a journal. You're not hanging it up on the wall. I mean, some people, you can go and you can paint on a canvas, which I eventually started doing too. But even though you could just put that to the side and put it away, there's still this like, but it's on a canvas. Like, what do I do with it now? I don't feel comfortable displaying it or whatever it is. But when it's in a journal, like, for sure, all this is just for me. I'm just allowing this to come out and be. So that's just it. It's just such like a freeing experience.
Do you feel like, or I guess let me ask, how did you know to not judge yourself? Was that part of the podcast? Was that suggested? Did you just have kind of a feeling or an expectation for yourself to not let it be a thing? How did you get to that of like, I'm not going to judge myself about this. I'm just going to do it and mess around?
That's a very good question. And honestly, I don't think I've been asked that before. And you're making me now think. I mean, I have had other people around in my life who have also helped me. I used to work at a design firm, and my boss went to Pratt, and I would I already, I would talk to him about like, oh, I'm not creative and this and that. So thankfully I did have him around as a voice to help me realize that art making and just making in general does not need to be this performative thing. So I might have just sort of internalized it already. And I think also just knowing that, again, like I said, like I'd never felt this calling before. Like, until recently, like I was really never spiritual, so it was just so different of a feeling that I
Mhm.
was just like, I know I really want to do this. It's exciting the hell out of me.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And so I don't want to, I know that this is a thing that could make me get in my own way, and I don't want to do that.
Sounds like that generator, hell yes. Like just your
Yeah.
body without even knowing. And
Yes.
it's interesting because the stories we tell ourselves, I'm super question on the judging because it's as I was preparing and I'm thinking, hearing you talk, Vicky, I always used to say to people, I'm really creative, I'm just not artistic. You're right. And even setting those of like, oh, I can come up with the ideas, but don't ask me to create anything tangible because I'm not artistic, right? And the stories we can tell ourselves around that, even.
Absolutely. And I was absolutely that person. And I'm like, I was that for like, 40 years-ish, like my whole life because I guess traditionally, thank God they're changing the way they teach in schools. But, when I was a kid, I just was never good at making things that really looked like things.
Hmm.
And the people that were celebrated were the ones who could. If you drew a picture and the person actually looked kind of close to what that person looks like,
Yeah.
you were celebrated. Whereas I'm like, oh, I don't know, that looks kind of like a zombie or something. It just
Yeah.
um, that being said, now that I've done it more because I've built confidence, I've played around with it. Like I generally still do abstract things because that's just more fun for me. But I have tried doing a little bit more realistic work. And just because I've just done it more, I've gotten better at it. And again, like I said, that's not the goal, but it's just another teaching moment, that we all start somewhere,
Yeah.
right? We're all beginners in of everything always.
And you talk about this not just being in theory because you're sharing with us right now how you've actually lived that. And so as you started to get into this journey, what impact were you seeing out of the gate? Or as you started, as time progressed, what was the impact on your life, your soul, your being?
Yeah, I think one of the things that really amazed me is after I would be painting and doing this for after I was doing this for like a couple weeks, I realized I would go back before I went and started another page. I would flip back through the pages I had already done and admire them. And I was like, oh, this is weird. I like this. Like I was falling in love with some of my work. And then beyond that, there was the texture because I was using acrylic paints. So I really love encouraging people to use acrylic paints because of that. You can touch it because it dries, the brushstrokes that are there, you can feel them. And then you kind of have these light memories of what you were going through in that time. And it's not necessarily, written down the way you're doing it in journaling, where you can fully like relive and really remember the details of that day or whatever you were feeling that moment. But I think just different things come out that I think were in the subconscious can come out through the art. So as you reflect on it, it's just these feelings pop up and it's really just a fascinating thing. And I'm not sure if I fully answered your question because I sort of forgot it, but
Yeah, well, it
Yeah.
sounds like I was wondering the impact that you personally had with exposure to this. And it sounds like maybe if I'm putting it in my words, like alleviation of maybe some of those feelings that had been internally stuck, or even just at a high level, exposure to new parts of yourself and how healing and beautiful it is for the nervous system to release judgment, to just let yourself be, to, then look back. And I loved seeing your face light up when you said, I was actually kind of proud of that. And that was
Mhm.
really cool. And so, yeah, as one does as we experience, I was wondering when that moment was or what you were starting to feel where you knew hey, this is a great modality for me and where I'm trying to be in life. And then also, how did that journey lead you to, wow, I actually want to make the world a better place by helping people do the same thing?
Right. Yeah. Yes. Thank you. So, yeah, I think when I noticed, I don't know. I just knew that every time I painted, I just felt good. It's hard to know if I really realized it in the moment, but what I can say is looking back, I'm more present when I'm painting. Generally not worrying about a whole lot of things when I'm painting, or doodling, whatever it is. Just letting something release. There's just this, it's almost somatic in some ways. Like things are just coming through, and I don't know why I want to try making this mark in this way. Um, it's just what came out. And I think that in one thing is incredibly freeing. Like that's one of the things I love to say about art journaling and therapeutic art is in so many ways there's no rules. Even when you're writing, like journaling, you have to follow some grammar rules or whatever if you ever want to be able to read it again, like usually you're spelling words. There's just some rules there. Again, nothing like, nothing against journaling. That's totally great too. I love that. I do that myself too. So, but this release and freeing sense it just feels really good and made me want to do it more. So I was really never on social media much, kind of a slightly older generation where I was like, I don't need to post on social media, whatever. But then for whatever reason, I just felt like I want to share these because I like them. I'm proud of them. I want to share these. And so I started posting pictures of my art and, all the stuff in my journal. And I got this like amazing feedback. And thinking back, like that's obviously like this external satisfaction, but it still feels good. It still feels good to know that what you're doing is interesting to other people. So, just started posting and therefore people started asking about it over time. And at some point, I was at a workshop and connected with someone who happened to it was in a workshop like a few times, actually in Montclair, a few towns down. And it just turned out that this woman and I just really connected really quickly, and we happened to live really close to each other. So, walking distance from each other. So that was really cool. And as we started hanging out, she asked me about what I was doing. I was still in my 9 to 5 at that point. She was dealing with burnout from her business, so she was actually on leave from burnout. And so she asked me, like, would you ever like come to my house and show me how to do this? And maybe I could bring some friends over. And so that was really kind of the beginning of it. And everyone really enjoyed it so much, and I had such great feedback. Like everyone felt so like I said, released, they had fun, it was just such a change from their normal lives. And everyone said, oh my God, I hadn't painted since I was like in high school or whatever. Yeah, and so really just from there it just built and built, and I was like, this is so much fun, this feels so good, I love helping people feel better. Yeah, and I was like, and you know what, and when I go to my 9 to 5 I feel worse. So something's got to shift, and so I started putting more effort into the business and going from there.
I love that you said it's kind of somatic because that's exactly what I wrote as you were talking was like wrote like somatics and creativity, playful innocence, and like, I have to say inner child. I don't want to overuse the word because I have my own fear of overusing words and playing down the importance of the concept themselves because it happens so frequently and things get super buzzy and then it gets kind of watered down and it pulls you further away from the potency of all of these incredible concepts and terms. But It is somatic because you're moving your body. And I think it's really, and here's the Aquarian and the generator of it all, at least from what it feels a lot like is sometimes we think of Aquarian energy as being so far ahead and so innovative that we can't grasp it. And I think we consider that to be these like unknown ideas, but sometimes it's something that's so simple and so powerful that we all forget that it is, that it's like literally a key, right? And so something like art making and therapeutic art journaling, and it is something that children do, but they don't know that they're doing it because children are so good, because babies come here born understanding they have the capability to soothe themselves, but they pick up our energy and they, all the things that happen to us as humans. And so they come here with this innocence and understanding in their whole being, that playfulness is our birthright, and that it is part of how we really like come to, like you've used the word freeing, because it really is, it's a form of freedom. And I think that so much of our lifetime is seeking a sense of freedom in our bodies and in the way we move through the world, and we get there by various ways. And so I love to look at somatics as not just you have to do yoga or you have to move your body in this way. Somatics is literally connecting your mind and your body in something. And so it's so cool because you don't have to have any skill. You can just literally, and you don't have to have the fancy items. You can pick up your journal and you can doodle like we did when you were in high school and you were doodling and you didn't listen to anyone else. Maybe you shouldn't have been, but it was like this little escape in your mind that connected all these different parts of your body and your mind, and the creativity. I think, I don't know, something about doing something creative. Like when you say, like, I did get better, right? Like, I think if the goal isn't to get better as an artist, but the more that you do it, the more confident you become, it opens up more avenues for you to access more and more creativity because you get, quote, better, but maybe just more expanded. And I love that. And I think you answered this already, but one of the questions was, really about like what art gave you that the words and the thinking couldn't, because I think you have probably many, many clients and many people that could benefit from your work, but I think the overthinkers of the world, probably this is like that beautiful way to stop. And I don't know what comes up it's like this way of stopping the overthinking because you're just doing, it's the somatics of it, but it's also the giving you something, giving you feeling and understanding more than what words could and thinking can act. Like we can only go so far because we only have such vocabulary, or like, so there's something that is really intangible. And maybe, I don't know, maybe we could speak a little even more on that if anything comes up, because there is a lot there. I think that's such a cool concept. Like, what does this art give you that literally no overthinking, no words, no processing mentally could do for you?
Yeah, honestly, I had a million, and I should have a pad in front of me because there were a million things that came up while you were talking. But yeah, I think I think one of the things that I think really struck me the most that you already noticed and I haven't mentioned yet is that, again, like when it comes to making art, and if you're allowing yourself to truly just do it without having plans, you end up letting things out and flow out that, yeah, that you maybe didn't have words for, didn't even know was there. And then the other thing I wanted to just tap on is that you're tapping into more of an intuitive part of yourself. It's that whole thing of like I said, I don't know why. I just feel like, and there's like this experimentation. I just get cheap brushes, and because if they get destroyed, I get new ones. Not that I want to just, not that I hate throw out culture, but that's a different topic. But let me just mash the brush in here and just see, oh, look at that. That makes such a
Mhm.
cool pattern on the page, Like when do you get to do something like that? And as opposed to, again, there's place for this and value for this with something like regular journaling. I know for me and some other people I've spoken to, a lot of people I've spoken to, our thinking brain kind of takes over. And so I know for me, like a lot of times I would kind of just write the same thing over again, which is fine. So that's something that's on your mind. But then how do you get to those things that, there's other things, but what are the things? They're not coming to me right now. And so I just think that like the thinking, like you said, the overthinking, the thinking brain can tend to take over and also maybe sometimes block the things you don't want that are you're scared to face, that you're scared to allow to bubble up. Whereas, with art making, you're going in there sort of like I said, really with just the purpose of the process and enjoying and playing and exploring. But at the same time, things come up. And you may not even notice it at that moment, but you might later, you might never really notice it. And for some reason, you just feel better. You might not really know why. And I think honestly, that's what mainly happened to me, until I, had more time, more and more time to process it all. But absolutely, you're saying like overthinking, absolutely it helps with perfectionism. Absolutely it helps with creativity across the board in life. So there's some like neuroscience stuff that I only just barely understand, but I read a book. And by the way, amazing book, Your Brain on Art. It's really, really, really cool. And I learned a lot. And it's one of the things that made me want to dive into this even more, because I knew that there was like I think I don't remember if I mentioned it before we started recording or not, but like I'm a very like science-based person in like my original nature. Like I have that creativity, but I want to be proven things. So anyway, that so you're when you are doing something, when you're doing something new and unique, that part of your brain starts to light up. The way to describe it is it's almost like, if you imagine like, like sizzling like electricity, right? There's like little electrical pulses happening. And if you're using this part of your brain that you haven't used in a while those things are lighting up, it's also kind of warming and lighting up things that are next to it. So there's like literally spots in your brain where you remember where like things are stored, right? And so that could light up this old memory from childhood, or where you put these two boxes together and made this thing. And then somewhere else, something, and you could also be dealing with this challenge at work, and you're like, maybe you're an engineer and you're like, I don't know how to get these things to work together. But then that thing lit up, that memory came up, and you're like, wait a minute. I remember, maybe you might not even be able to say this to yourself, but it's like that little thing of when you did that thing as a kid, like, oh my God, like I wonder if I do something like that. And now
Yeah.
you've found the solution. Or maybe you haven't, but at least you've tried something else. So it can just really help you again with that creative thinking in the rest of life. And then also actually giving you the practice of, practicing testing things and failing at them and being okay with that and doing it again and again and again. So it also even gives you this resilience. So it's like, yeah, it's super fascinating that, that art can do that.
Yeah, and I had seen, so the science behind making art you had shared also just from like a biological standpoint reduces that stress hormone cortisol as
Yes.
well. Yeah, and I was thinking about, the lessons in art, and last year-ish, and we talked about this on the podcast a little bit, just started saying yes to playing. Every time kids would ask me to play, I would just say yes. And what was coming up for me as you were talking was just this thought around, so of course some of those activities are coloring and art, right? And just how aware I would get to just the control around what that art would be, or even what that little child was doing in their art, right? If we're coloring the same picture and they go into my section and start coloring the wrong color, right? It's this callback to, why are you stressing out if Mickey Mouse's pants are blue today? Or purple or orange or yellow, right? And coming back to really that learning of like, where's this control? Who told me it has to be this way? And, I think also for parents, just observing on the back end and bonus parenting two little girls for several years, seeing how parents can get so attached to their child's art, I think is like an interesting thing maybe for us as individuals to take note of how we're controlling other people's art and what they're doing, and bringing it back to us and focusing on that. Michelle, what comes up for you?
I do always come back to the idea that curiosity and judgment can't live in the same place. And so when you talk about, creativity and doing it for the sake of joy, but I think you said, you get to experiment. You're kind of like, what happens if, right? Like you're just curious because there's no boundaries about, it's almost like I had the thought of, what if I started drawing and I was like, I'm going to make something really ridiculous, or I'm going to make something really, or whatever, but yeah, it's almost impossible when you're experimenting to judge, because if you judge in a state of experimenting, I mean, from a science perspective, but also from anything, if you're judging the experiment, you're not getting the best possible outcome because you're not open to all possibilities. And the same thing goes in our body. And so, the thought was, what happens in the body? I don't know. What happens in our body when we focus on not making something good or not making something beautiful or whatever it is.
Yeah, yeah, you touched on some some interesting points there. Sometimes, like you said, when your focus is not on making something beautiful, sometimes I challenge people, and it's amazing what people's reactions are. Sometimes I'll challenge people to pick their least favorite color, and work with that. And then what's often interesting, because I've done this myself too, and then I say, well, okay, you painted with your least favorite color. It's awful. I hate that color. Okay, I get it. Now, see if you can find a color that you can put next to it that makes it look better. And you pretty much always can. Like, it's all relative, right? Like, what makes a color bad? If you're painting a landscape and you don't like the color brown, like, you're not going to paint a landscape that looks like a landscape. So, so the color brown in that case makes a lot of sense, but maybe you don't want to use brown in this thing. So, yeah, that's a very interesting thing. And I've also encouraged people to try making something ugly on purpose. And it's like your body, is like, oh my God, I can't do that. Why? Why can't you do that? And then just going back to what Ali was talking about with kids, since starting this art making, this journaling experience, it's helped me so much with my kids. I absolutely am so much better about just letting them do their thing. And I remember, no shade to my parents. They tried their best. They meant well, but, they were always telling me like, no, you got to do this. It's not, it shouldn't be that color. Why should it, like hair isn't pink or whatever. Well, but what will happen if I make her hair pink? Like, what's the consequence? There's none. Maybe it'll actually look really cool. And so, yeah, with my daughters, I caught myself doing those things too for a long time. And then, like doing crafts and things like that. They get all these craft kits and it's got like instructions and all. And one of my daughters, I mean, she really pushes my buttons, like still continuing to work on it, but she like takes that craft box, that craft kit, and like, who cares about the instructions? I found some gems and I'm going to put these gems on this. I'm like, well, but you're supposed to be making a bookmark. Like, well, no, but I like the gems for this piece of paper that's over here. I don't want to make a bookmark. Well, then why did you open the kit? Like, I don't know. It looked cool. you know? So, I still am like, sometimes, it still like drives me nuts. But at the same time, I'm now able to catch myself though and be like, okay, yeah, she's being creative. She's being allowed to explore and experiment. And I just thinking back to, my own life, I didn't explore and experiment very much because I was living out of fear, of doing the wrong thing, doing the thing that won't make me enough money in life. I was coming from this place of fear, like, oh, I can't do that. What if it's ugly? What if it's ugly? You learn something. You learn from mistakes. You learn from like maybe she will regret that she didn't make the actual project that was created in that kit, but now she's learned, oh, if I open a kit and I use all the supplies but don't actually make the thing, then, maybe that could be a learning experience. Like, oh, now I'm disappointed I can't make that thing. Maybe she'll think about it going forward. Maybe she'll still make the same decision.
Yeah.
So yeah, everything is a learning experience, and having something like art to help you learn to be okay with making mistakes and taking small risks. It's a much safer place to practice that than in real life. Not that this isn't real life, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, yeah.
In big
Yeah.
life decisions. Yeah,
You get kind of a playground. I'm a trainer, adult teacher by trade, corporate America trade. And that's what I always say when we're in sessions too, is like, this is the playground. This is the place because it's very low risk. So I think about that. I'm wondering if, because you have a couple of offerings, I'm curious because you've mentioned this group dynamic. So walk us through what that experience entails. If somebody signs up for a group art journaling experience, what does that look like?
Yeah, so in group workshops, I will generally have a theme. Maybe it's release and letting go, or, in February, it's like self-love, that sort of thing. So coming into it around a theme that, people can relate to, I'll just guide people to make their art. So if it's in person, I'll bring all the supplies, hand everything out. If it's online, I'll send out a suggested supply list, but they can always just show up with pen and paper because, the mediums you use are not really the most important part of this. And so I just guide people with prompts. I usually start with a grounding, a little bit of a short meditation to get people to feel into what they need that day and really just start to guide them and think about whatever it is that topic is. So maybe with something like self-love, it's feeling into where do you feel love, or is there love missing somewhere from your life? What is that? And so just asking a few questions around that, and then really just inviting them to doodling. And it can be a little bit scary for people because it is sort of open-ended, but I do help. I can see when someone's like freaking out, doesn't know where to start. And then I'll say something like, just pretend like you dropped the pencil on the paper and it made a mark on accident. Well, now it's not an empty page anymore,
Mhm.
right? And so now go from there. So now you just have this like line across the page, make it into this sort of maybe D shape or something, or maybe it turns into like a dollar sign sort of shape because you make an S through it, whatever it is. It just helps them get going and helps them get into it. And so there's definitely some people that have said to me, like, oh, those first like 5, 10 minutes, I was like, ugh, kind of. But eventually they let themselves sink into it and just have fun and realize, and their nervous system regulates. They're realizing, I did it. This thing was scary, and I've now gotten past it quite easily, within 5, 10 minutes, and I'm okay. I'm safe.
Yeah.
I took what I thought of as a risk for me at that time, and I'm okay. And that's very empowering.
It's also changing the neural pathways in your brains around safety and trying new things. There's the science behind it as well. I was thinking about, I don't know if you both have seen Tyler Henry, the psychic, but not psychic, he's a medium. He had a show, but the whole time he just has a note paper and there's no rhyme or reason, but he's just moving it,
Yeah.
moving it, moving it. And it's what helps him communicate. And then that is what a lot of time the people who he gives readings to want that. And they take that as part of the experience. And that I was thinking about that when you were talking, because again, it's like taking out the judgment of what is or isn't art, but it really is that mechanism of just getting in and doing it. And I would imagine that your experience and also the gifts you bring are that you're able to step in and support and guide during those sessions when there are blocks and helping those who show up kind of dig deeper into, hey, Allie, you're not really upset that Mickey Mouse's shorts are not the right color.
Mhm.
Let's go deeper and think about what's causing that and really releasing it and getting that moment. Yeah. And like today, just having that presence and being able to be in it is so helpful for the nervous system, even just that activity of showing up and spending time in these environments you create.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's super important to just reiterate, right? Like you talked about the workshop experience, and I imagine that there's some overlap a little bit. I think you work one-on-one with people, right? And
Yep.
I think it's super important to literally draw the line through it. It's like, what do we know about the nervous system and regulating the nervous system is that, yes, daily practices are helpful, are necessary, and very important to teach yourself how to regulate. And also, the best work and the most impactful work is done in stressful situations because that's where we really move the needle in terms of, rewiring your neural pathways. And, when we're some people do it in extreme ways. But like you said, there's this really risk-free arena, playground, to use your words, Ali, is where you are putting yourself in a slightly stressful situation because you're uncomfortable. And you're like, you're uncomfortable? Good, good. Because think of all the there's a lot of ways to be uncomfortable in this world. This is one of the most low risk ways because you're introducing yourself to a discomfort where it's safe to see the other side of your discomfort. You've just done that much more work on your nervous system in the moment because you've worked through the discomfort and you've worked through the racing nerves or whatever happens in your body. And I think it's really cool to, like I said, to just say that again, because if people listening aren't quite sure, because again, art, drawing, doodling, these are things as adults with lots of years of programming and lots of judgment on ourselves and lots of real life experiences, like people having children and full-time work or jobs that they hate, all of the things that make up our daily lives. Art and drawing and play feels frivolous and it feels something that we are too busy for. We don't have time. It's not this type of self-care we've been sold because we've been, sold that self-care is a product, is a bubble bath, is a XYZ. And those things are not somatic. They do not connect you, mind, body, soul in a moment. And they don't allow you, most don't allow you the opportunity to get into a flow state where your brain can take a pause and rest. You don't have to be thinking. You can just be in your body in the most real way. And so I think drawing the distinction of this act of playfulness, of creativity and doodling at its simplest form, not even putting the word art on it if you don't, if that feels too much of a stretch, like just doodling, like you said, you can show up with pen and paper. And it literally gives you this exact opportunity to feel a little nervous in your nervous system, to be a little just uncomfortable, and then to move through that in a space that is literally so safe as drawing and as color and art. And it's really potent. And it's cool because it seems so simple and it seems like we shouldn't have the time for it. But what it could do, as you've really articulated, is it could do the work of many types of therapies or just simply by giving yourself a few minutes to just like, I'm using the word doodle because it feels the most like silly. Like it's like, just doodle, just do the thing. And I was always doodling in the margins of my notepads because, one, it helped me listen better. That's just, that was really helpful for me. And, I'm a makeup artist, so I do makeup and I also used to do those little face charts and it was so fun to just feel like, oh, I did that. Like, okay, I guess I do know how to shade a piece of paper and build texture or like you said, and I do know how to do this. I would never think that. But I love the connection to the nervous system because it feels, after the conversation we've been having, it feels so clear. It's like, hello, there's dot, 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 step by step. Here you go. Here's a way to literally put yourself in a stressful position that isn't as stressful, right? Like you're capable because through those you build confidence. It's not like I'm going to go throw myself in an ice bath and then like shock my nervous system and not have the tools to, no, you're fully capable now with zero training, with zero skill. You're capable of moving through this moment to the other side and how amazing that is. But you talk you talk about both the nervous system regulation, but also rest. And there's this idea of what happens when people, and we'll say when women give themselves the permission to rest while they're awake, right? It's not, I'm gonna go take a nap or I'm done doing this thing. Let me lay down and like pass out for a few seconds or veg out on a show or whatever you. But what happens when you see, I imagine you see a lot of women or people that you work with who do this, and there is maybe that connection between resting and being awake, like an intentional rest.
Yes, absolutely. There's a lot of really interesting information on the difference between sleeping and resting while awake. It's two totally different things. both are definitely necessary. So yeah, saying that, "Ugh, I don't have time to rest, it's almost bedtime, I'll rest when I go to sleep. I'll go to bed early." Even if, going to bed early, great. That is great. But it's actually still different than wakeful rest. So, that can be meditation, that can be watching TV is maybe okay, but you tend to be sort of removing yourself from your body when you're watching TV. You're sort of almost getting hypnotized by the TV, so you're not maybe processing what's going on inside. So just giving yourself time to rest, and people don't always know how to do that. Meditation, I love meditation, but meditation to many people is very intimidating. Oh, I can't sit that long, all that sort of stuff. But like you were saying, like doodling is so accessible, even if you're, at your job, you're at your 9 to 5, you sit at a desk all day or whatever, and you feel like you're not really, maybe you're at a place where they're like watching you all the time, and you're like, oh, well, I don't have time to go and do. You can have your notebook by the side of your computer, and when you have that time of like, oh my God, my brain is like, I'm exhausted, I need rest, you can doodle for a little bit, literally without going anywhere. You can do this practice on a sticky note on your legal pad that you keep next to your desk, just making some shapes, making just scribble marks, expressing whatever it is. And actually, just going back to what you were saying before, Michelle, about your doodling, and you always doodled in the margins and stuff in school. And you said, well, maybe I should have been paying attention. But you know what? I'm just speculating here. That could have been, a mechanism helping you feel better and safer in that classroom. Yes, you were technically supposed to be there, but it wasn't of your choosing. And okay, like we need school, yes, all that, but school can be done in such better ways than we have. And so you were probably regulating your own nervous system in that time because you were probably feeling anxious. Maybe you were thinking about like, I don't know, whatever it is that you were gonna do that evening, if you were in a sport or whatever, and you're just processing. It has also been scientifically studied, by the way, that doodling for some people, especially people with ADHD, helps them think. So doodling should be encouraged. Yeah, super
It's a
interesting.
very kinesthetic learner too, and actually just doing. I think about that a lot too, because in corporate America, I mean, if you've been at a table in a room where like everyone sit round, it's like okay for you to be on your laptop, but I get the side eye if I'm doodling a flower
Yeah,
in,
yeah,
in my notes, even though I'm totally paying attention. It's just this shift of the mindset.
totally. Yeah.
Yeah, and you know what? Just it's fascinating because again, because I was working at a design firm, everyone doodles.
Yeah, yeah.
But it's such a different, but everyone gets it because
Yeah.
everyone's a creative. Everyone probably has ADHD.
Yeah, totally. Well, that's what I'm saying is like when I'm in conversation with people, even one-on-one, I always have a pen and paper in front of me because oftentimes when I'm like this, my mind starts to wander because I'm the type of person that I do need to have multiple things in front of me and just kind of, and I'm always listening. It's the same reason why my husband can, watch sports and I have no idea what's going on, but I'm listening to the announcers and I know everything and he's watching it and I'm reading or doing something and I hear things that he's like, what are you talking about? I'm like, oh, is this person, and everybody, I'm sure there's a level of ADHD there, but I like to think that, some of the world's greatest artists, if you watch art documentaries, most of them probably would be diagnosed with some type of, attention. I don't know, I'm not even going to say it right. And if they were, would they have had the freedom to create these lasting pieces that we base, all of our studies on? And so it's so necessary, in my opinion. But before, I want to make sure we talked about your group work, and I think that was really eye-opening. But I think you have some other offerings, and I just want to touch on or to hear a little bit more about how all of the different ways that people can work with you. And yeah.
Yeah. Yes. I do group workshops like we talked about. They are both online and in person. So depending on where you are, if you can come out, I think being in person is definitely my favorite, but online is incredibly helpful as well. I also do one-on-ones. I just launched a new container, which is It's called Wild Sanctuary. What that is, wild is that's what I call my frameworks, which stands for wonder, inspiration, liberation, and discovery. So it's a 4 month long program where I work with you one-on-one, and we go through each of those each month. And we talk about what it is that's going on right now, what you want to work on. And in each month, we look at it through that month's theme, the lens of that month's themes, starting out with wonder because that invites sort of that childlike play, right? Yeah, so looking at it from a child's mind, beginner's mind, that's what it was. It needed to come out. Using a beginner's mind to look at what your challenges are, what your things are that you want to work on, and then going into inspiration, noticing what's around you. You know, people kind of over the years start to walk around with blinders on. They just see the same things over and over and over again, with which then we go into liberation. So how do you kind of set things free, feel that freedom that I was talking about? And then D is sort of discovering, like, after you've done all this, what's next? Discovering maybe a hobby, but whether it's keeping going with art, or maybe you decide you want to start crocheting or whatever it is, just discovering those things that really light you up after you've gone through this whole experience, and how you can continue to nurture yourself going forward. So that's my one-on-one program that I have right now. And I do also do one-offs, but the program is definitely going to get you the best. You're really going to go through a big transformation there. And then I do have a membership. So on there, that's kind of the more accessible, like if you really feel like you don't have time, on there I have 5 minute, 10 minute, 15 minute prompts. I post prompts every day, video prompts of me, so you can just listen and do some doodling right there whenever you have the time. So that's really great as well.
Accessible. I love that you're making this accessible for all women to show up as well. What else about that? The offerings, if anything.
Well, so I have a really cool event that's going to be coming up on February 18th, where we are doing like a rage release, and then like a calming, settling down. There's a lot going on in our country today, and I won't get into the details of that. I think we all know, but it's hard, and it's hard to process those things, and we're all dealing with it in different ways, and so.
Yeah, just today I was having a conversation over coffee with friends. Is I was like, I'm just angry. I'm not angry about the things that happened last week. Like it's not just one thing, just this anger bubbling up. So I'll have to see if I'm free because I was like, rage and release.
Yes,
Yeah.
Yeah,
yes,
yeah.
yes, absolutely. Yeah, so I'm working with a partner who's going to start off with some Reiki, and then I'm going to go after that Reiki, I'm going to guide people through some art journaling to help them process and move forward. And we might do some dancing and movement to kind of get that out of our bodies as well. So, yeah,
It's
that's
really
going to be really
beautiful.
cool.
Yeah, I don't think people realize how much you need an outlet for all of the emotions, but especially the ones that can maybe control you a little bit more than, the other ones are a little bit maybe more manageable. Yeah, and so having an outlet for something so strong as rage, it's really critical because I think so many people are walking around and releasing their rage on other people, and we're not getting it. It's not in the ways that move that it doesn't line up with your intention, right? Like I just wrote about this. I think most people want to be in service. Most people care and want to do something. I think it can be very, very difficult to know when the emotions are bigger than you and bigger than what you have the capacity to manage, how to channel it in the ways that line up with how your heart wants to care and give back. And so having these places is so necessary. And I was thinking a lot recently just about the need to be in person, face to face with people in all capacities, in creating, in releasing your rage, in ways that we are not behind a screen arguing with people online. I don't think that's me personally. I don't think that is helping the bigger picture all the time because it's not human to human. And being in person, people communicate differently when they have to see you in front of them. They don't have anything to hide behind that can inflate the way that we speak with less respect for people or whatever it is. And so being in face to face, it just like, again, it's more of that ripple effect. And like you said, your intention is I just wanted to make the world a better place. I want to do my part and then see that rippled into the world in all of the ways that, you may not even really see the full effect of it, but you just know that it's happening. And because you do what you do, everything that you can control to be the like catalyst for all of this good. So I really love that. So we only have a few more minutes. So I want to get to our closing questions. We talked about so much, and I really hope people, check out your work because I think sometimes what we consider the most things that we look past because maybe we can't do them or they feel really simple are usually the most impactful. And clearly, like anybody listening, go back and re-listen because they're real clear. At least I see it so clearly, the ways that art making in this therapeutic art making is really, it's nervous system work, it's real rest for your soul kind of work. Because if you are a person who is really charged by what's going on in the world, if you are just a person who has so much going on in your own life that the world around you is too, that's real too. Like people, got shit going on. And
I think about how many hobbies and including in that arts world people picked up during COVID, including myself,
yeah,
like
yeah.
coloring books. And
Colors. Yeah.
where did that all go now? It's right. And so I think your work with Wildly Creative is just a really cool invitation to invite people back to that space.
Yeah,
Love
yeah.
that. Yeah, that's such a great observation. Yeah.
Mm. So, what is a quote or a mantra that resonates very deeply with you?
Quote or mantra that resonates deeply with me. Just try it.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think, yeah.
Is there a book or a podcast that's had a significant impact on your life?
Well, not that everyone would necessarily read this book, but yeah, that book that I mentioned before, actually, Your Brain on Art,
Hmm.
it's if you're someone who's like, who really likes to understand the science behind what we're talking about here, it's just so amazing it's so beyond even the things that we talked about here that art can heal.
Any memorable feedback that you've gotten from a client or someone who's taken one of your courses?
Yeah, one of my clients, she was going through all sorts of just challenges at home, her mother being sick, so, just becoming a caretaker to her mother when she's already a mother herself. She was just going through so much, so much. And then she took one of my courses and she told me later that she decided she wanted to take a yoga class and she was kind of terrified to do it. But after going through working with me, she told herself, well, she could do anything. There's no reason she couldn't do it. And so she took the yoga class and felt so much better in her body afterwards. So, I mean, I was like, okay, yes, this is the right work for me.
It's that
Yeah.
ripple effect you were talking about earlier. So when we had asked Vicky prior to hitting record, like what's important to get out there, and I loved your response was that you're just trying to make the world a better place. So I love that feedback, and I think for those interested, yeah, sometimes one modality will just open up to it's that ripple effect. So you're doing that, and that just I got chills when you were talking about that woman. It's cool.
Yeah, I can do anything. You know what also makes me think of is just the power of women in your corner and people in general. But I do think there is something about when you have, you know, yeah, I mean, again, I can only speak from this experience because this is the body I was born, this is what I know. But I do know that there is something about that community of women that there's nothing like it to make you feel like I can do anything, but having the right person in your corner and not doing anything for you, just helping kind of like hold the light for you to do for yourself. And I really love that. And so our last question we ask everyone is, what does self-love mean to you?
Self-love to me, I think, is not giving up on yourself, actually, just continuing. I think it's the reason I ended up finding my own joy because, I didn't know that this was where it was going to lead, but I knew that I needed to keep trying because there had to be something better. So I think not giving up and continuing to try something new, like I was saying before. Yeah.
I just wanted to say, I know we only have a few minutes, but I just think it's so beautiful for, going back to the very beginning of our conversation. I imagine there are many, many people out there who have, the picture perfect life and still feeling like there's something else you want. And I think it's beautiful. I think your story and what you do helps shed some light on the reality that there's nothing wrong with your beautiful, incredible life. There's nothing wrong. And it's all of the things that are right for you. And also you're allowed to want something more. And sometimes that something more is like this life-giving experience of being able to feel good about what you're doing in the world, how you show up. That has nothing to do with your children and your partner and the job and all of the things that are so wonderful on their own. It doesn't take away from them. And it doesn't mean anything different. They're all still wonderful and can be really great. And you can also want something more. And it only makes you show up in all of those areas, even more of yourself. Like it doesn't make you better. It just makes you be more you. And that's like, what a beautiful, incredible experience of life. So anyways, go ahead, Allie.
Vicky, I just wanted you to share with the audience, where can people find you if they're interested in learning more and going to one of your workshops and working with you?
Yeah, so my website is wildlycreativewellness.com, no dashes or anything like that. And same thing, I'm mostly on Instagram at wildlycreativewellness. Not .com, just Wildly Creative Wellness on Instagram. Yeah, I would love to talk to anyone who this resonates with. Yeah, that's where I am.
Vicky, thank you so much for your time today. And we will tag all of that information in the show notes for easy access to anyone who's interested. But you are making the world a better place. And even just spending time today has really kind of brought this resurgence of this world to me. So you are making the world a better place, specifically with Michelle and I today, and the ripple out through Karmic Mirror. So just thank you for your time, and we appreciate you being here. And thank you, listeners, for tuning in.
Thank you so much. You guys are also making the world a better place. So thank you as well.
Thanks for tuning in. If you resonate with today's conversation, connect with us on Instagram at Karmic Mirror Podcast and send us a message.
And don't forget to subscribe wherever you listen. And if you're loving Karmic Mirror, we'd appreciate a glowing review or a share with someone who could benefit.
As we close, remember, life is not a one-size-fits-all approach. How are you honoring your unique path? Stay curious and always be kind to yourself. Until next time on Karmic Mirror.